Fear is not the problem, staying paralyzed is, and understanding that difference changes how you see yourself and your life. Fear is a natural reaction to uncertainty. It shows up whenever something matters. Whenever a choice has consequences, whenever growth demands responsibility. Fear doesn't arrive to destroy you. It arrives to signal importance. The damage begins only when fear is given authority over your actions. Paralysis feels intelligent at first. It disguises itself as caution, planning, or patience. It tells you to wait until you are more prepared, more confident, more certain. It convinces you that standing still is safer than moving forward. Over time, that stillness stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like your personality. You don't say, "I'm afraid." You say, "I'm not ready." The result is the same, nothing moves. Fear is uncomfortable, but it is temporary. Paralysis is comfortable, and that is what makes it dangerous. Comfort reduces urgency. It allows days to pass without friction. You don't fail, but you don't grow. You don't fall, but you don't rise. Life becomes a controlled routine where nothing terrible happens, yet nothing meaningful begins. That quiet stagnation slowly drains your sense of purpose. Staying paralyzed requires constant mental effort. You have to justify why you haven't acted yet. You replay scenarios in your head, compare yourself to others, analyze timing, and imagine outcomes. All of that thinking feels productive, but it produces no results. You end each day exhausted, not from effort, but from avoidance. That exhaustion then becomes another reason to stay still. Paralysis weakens confidence. Confidence is not built through thinking, it is built through action and survival. Each time you act and handle the outcome, you collect evidence that you are capable. When you stay paralyzed, you collect nothing. Over time, the absence of evidence turns into self-doubt. You begin to question your ability, not because you failed, but because you never tried. Fear grows stronger when it is not challenged. When you don't move, your mind fills the silence with worst-case scenarios. Problems feel bigger than they are. Risks feel heavier than reality. Action would correct those distortions, but paralysis keeps fear alive by never testing it. What you avoid today feels twice as scary tomorrow. Paralysis also distorts time. Days blend together. Weeks disappear. You tell yourself you'll act soon. But soon never arrives. Looking back, you don't see dramatic mistakes. You see long stretches of nothing. That realization hurts more than failure ever could. Failure teaches. Stagnation only reminds you of what you didn't do. Fear doesn't stop momentum, paralysis does. People who move forward still feel fear. They simply don't wait for it to disappear. They act while it's present. Each step weakens fear's authority. Each movement interrupts the freeze. Momentum returns not because fear vanished, but because action broke the paralysis. Paralysis reshapes identity in a subtle way. You start seeing yourself as someone who hesitates, someone who needs perfect conditions, someone who plays it safe. That identity influences future choices. You lower your goals. You avoid responsibility. You choose comfort over possibility. Fear didn't create that identity. Repeated paralysis did. The world responds to movement, not to intention. Opportunities don't appear for people who are thinking about acting. They appear for people already in motion. When you are paralyzed, life doesn't punish you, it simply passes you by. Not out of cruelty but out of alignment. Motion attracts motion. Stillness attracts more stillness. Fear can coexist with progress. Paralysis cannot. Fear says something matters. Paralysis says stay the same. One points toward growth. The other protects comfort at the cost of your potential. The moment you stop trying to eliminate fear and start refusing paralysis, everything shifts. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. Fear will always visit before change. That is normal. What determines the direction of your life is not whether fear appears, but whether you obey it. When fear speaks and you move anyway, it loses power. When fear speaks and you freeze, it gains control. And over time that control costs far more than fear ever could. Not deciding feels safe on the surface. And that is exactly why it becomes the most dangerous trap. Safety is attractive to the mind, because it promises protection from pain, failure, and embarrassment. When you don't decide, nothing dramatic happens. There is no risk. No confrontation, no immediate loss. You remain where you are, surrounded by what is familiar. That familiarity creates the illusion that you are protected, when in reality you are slowly being confined. The danger of not deciding is that it hides its cost. Risk has visible consequences. You can point to a failed attempt or a wrong move. Indecision has invisible consequences. Days pass quietly. Opportunities fade without noise. Energy drains without explanation. You don't crash, you slowly sink. Because nothing explodes, you assume nothing is wrong. But life is not built through explosions, it is shaped through direction. When you avoid deciding, you believe you are keeping options open. You tell yourself that by waiting you can choose better later. What actually happens is the opposite. Time starts choosing for you. Circumstances change. People move on. Windows close. The choice you thought you were preserving quietly disappears. Safety didn't protect your options, it erased them. Indecision feels intelligent because it often comes wrapped in logic. You say you need more information, more clarity, more confidence. You convince yourself that patience is wisdom. But patience without movement is not wisdom, it is avoidance with good branding. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience requires action. By not deciding, you delay the very feedback that would make future decisions easier. The trap deepens because comfort reduces urgency. When nothing forces you to move, you stop feeling pressure. Pressure is uncomfortable. But it is also activating. It pushes you to grow. Without it, ambition dulls. Goals feel distant. What once mattered starts to feel optional. You don't consciously quit on yourself, you slowly disengage. Not deciding trains your nervous system to associate action with danger and stillness with relief. Each time you avoid a decision and feel temporary calm, your brain learns that avoidance works. That lesson is powerful and destructive. Over time, even small decisions feel heavy. What once required courage now requires force. The trap tightens, not because life became harder, but because you practice hesitation. Indecision also protects you from immediate regret, but it guarantees long-term regret. Regret from action is sharp but brief. You learn, adjust, and move on. Regret from inaction is dull but persistent, it lingers. It resurfaces in quiet moments. It asks questions you can't answer. Not deciding feels safe today, but it creates a future filled with what if. The most deceptive part of indecision is that it allows you to feel responsible without being accountable. You can say you are thinking, planning, or waiting for the right moment. Those words sound mature. But accountability requires outcomes, not intentions. Without a decision, there are no outcomes, only explanations. Life responds to clarity. When you decide, even imperfectly, your behavior aligns. Your time organizes itself. Your focus sharpens. Your energy has direction. When you don't decide, everything stays scattered. You feel busy but unproductive. Tired but unfulfilled. Safe but dissatisfied. That dissatisfaction is the cost of the trap. Indecision slowly erodes self-trust. You start doubting your ability to choose, to commit, to follow through. Not because you failed, but because you never proved to yourself that you could act. Confidence is built through movement. When you stay still, there is nothing to build on. You begin to see yourself as someone who waits instead of someone who acts. Safety without growth eventually feels like suffocation. The routine that once felt comfortable starts to feel limiting. The stability you protected turns into stagnation. At that point, fear increases, not decreases. You fear change more because you've avoided it longer. The trap tightens further. Not deciding does not keep you neutral. It places you on a path of default outcomes. Those outcomes are rarely what you want. They are simply what happens when intention is not backed by choice. The trap is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It works quietly, convincing you that staying the same is protection, while slowly taking everything that movement could have given you. The price of deciding is paid once. But the price of not deciding is paid every single day, and most people don't realize how expensive that daily payment really is. When you make a decision, especially a difficult one, it hurts upfront. There is tension, uncertainty, fear, and discomfort. You feel exposed. You feel responsible. You feel like you stepped into something you can't easily undo. That moment feels heavy, which is why many people avoid it. But what they don't see is that the pain of deciding has an end. Deciding concentrates pain, it brings it to one moment. You face it, you feel it, you deal with it. Whether the outcome is success or failure, something changes. You gain clarity. You gain experience. You move forward. Even if the decision turns out wrong, the cost was paid, the lesson was learned, and life continues from a new position. There is progress, even through mistakes. Not deciding spreads pain out over time. It doesn't hit you all at once. It charges you quietly, daily, in small amounts that seem manageable. A little frustration here. A little doubt there. A sense of restlessness that never fully goes away. Because the pain isn't intense in one moment, you tolerate it. You normalize it. You tell yourself it's not that bad. And that's exactly why it becomes dangerous. Every day you don't decide, you pay with mental energy. You think about what you should be doing. You replay the same conversations in your head. You imagine different futures without committing to any of them. That constant mental noise is exhausting. You end the day tired not from effort but from indecision. And the next day you pay again. You also pay with confidence. Each day without a decision reinforces the idea that you can't trust yourself to choose. You start doubting your judgment, your courage, your ability to handle consequences. Not because you failed, but because you never proved to yourself that you could act. Confidence doesn't disappear suddenly. It erodes quietly with every delayed choice. Not deciding costs you time, and time is the only resource you can't recover. Opportunities don't announce when they leave. They fade. They move toward people who are willing to commit. When you finally feel ready, you often realize the moment passed. That loss hurts more than the original fear of deciding ever did, because now it's mixed with regret. You also pay emotionally. Living in indecision creates a low-level dissatisfaction that never fully rests. You feel capable but unfulfilled, busy but stuck, safe but unhappy. That emotional tension becomes your background state. Over time you forget what clarity feels like. You forget what it's like to wake up knowing you are moving somewhere. The daily cost of not deciding also shows up in your identity. You start seeing yourself as someone who waits, someone who hesitates, someone who needs perfect conditions. That self-image influences future choices, making decisions even harder. The longer you delay, the heavier deciding feels. What once required courage now feels impossible. The price increases the longer you wait. Deciding once may lead to discomfort, but it also leads to momentum. Momentum changes everything. When you move, even imperfectly, feedback appears. You learn. You adjust. You grow. That growth reduces fear over time. The cost of deciding does not repeat itself forever. It transforms into experience. The cost of not deciding never stops billing you. It shows up as missed potential, as conversations you never had, as skills you never developed, as versions of yourself you never allowed to exist. You don't notice it all at once. You notice it years later, when you look back and realize how long you stayed in the same place. People often choose indecision because it feels cheaper in the moment. They avoid the upfront cost of courage. But they don't calculate the long-term expense. Small daily payments add up. What feels tolerable today becomes unbearable over time. The pain you try to avoid multiplies instead of disappearing. Deciding doesn't guarantee success? That's true. But it guarantees movement. And movement always teaches something. Not deciding guarantees repetition. The same doubts, the same frustrations, the same stalled life. That repetition is the real cost. When you understand this, the fear of deciding changes shape. You stop asking whether a decision will hurt, because you realize both options have a cost. One is immediate and finite. The other is quiet and endless. And once you see that clearly, indecision stops feeling safe and starts feeling expensive. People who move forward are not the ones who wake up feeling confident, ready and fearless. They are the ones who move while feeling uncertain, uncomfortable, and unsure. Confidence is often misunderstood as a prerequisite, something you must possess before you act. In reality, confidence is a byproduct. It is built through action, not waiting. Those who advance understand this truth, even if they can't always explain it. They don't wait to feel ready because they know readiness is created in motion. Waiting for confidence is a subtle form of procrastination. It sounds reasonable. You tell yourself you just need to feel a bit more prepared, a bit more secure. But that feeling rarely arrives on its own. Confidence does not appear in stillness. It is shaped by experience, and experience demands participation. When you refuse to act until you feel confident, you are asking for a result without paying the price required to earn it. Those who move forward accept discomfort as part of the process. They don't interpret fear as a signal to stop, but as a sign that they are stepping into something meaningful. Fear doesn't disappear when they act, it changes. It becomes background noise instead of a controlling force. Each small action weakens fear's grip and strengthens their sense of capability. This is how confidence is constructed, brick by brick through doing. People who wait, on the other hand, often believe that confidence will protect them from mistakes. They want to avoid embarrassment, failure, or regret. But avoiding mistakes does not build confidence, it builds fragility. When you shield yourself from challenges, you also shield yourself from growth. Over time, even minor risks feel overwhelming, because you haven't practiced handling them. Those who advance understand that confidence grows from evidence. Every action, no matter how imperfect, provides proof. Proof that you can survive discomfort. Proof that you can learn. Proof that you can adapt. This evidence accumulates. With each step taken, the internal dialogue changes. Doubt loses volume because action speaks louder than thoughts ever could. Action also clarifies reality. Many fears are vague and exaggerated when they live only in the mind. When you move, uncertainty becomes specific. You see what actually works and what doesn't. That clarity reduces anxiety. Even setbacks become manageable because they are concrete. The unknown is far more frightening than a defined problem. And action transforms the unknown into something tangible. Advancers don't wait for motivation either. They know motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Action, however, can be scheduled. It can be chosen. Once action starts, motivation often follows. The body moves first, and the mind catches up. This sequence is reversed for those who stay stuck, always waiting for the right feeling. There is also a difference in how these two groups relate to identity. Those who move forward see themselves as people who act, even when it's uncomfortable. That identity reinforces future behavior. Each action strengthens the belief that they are capable of handling challenges. Those who wait begin to see themselves as cautious, hesitant, or not ready. That identity narrows their possibilities and reinforces inaction. Confidence built through action is resilient. It doesn't collapse when things go wrong, because it is grounded in experience, not illusion. When you have faced difficulty before, you trust yourself to face it again. This trust is what separates movement from stagnation. It is not about certainty of success, but certainty of self. The irony is that waiting for confidence often creates more fear. The longer you delay, the bigger the task appears. The mind fills the gap with imagined risks. What could have been learned through small steps becomes a massive obstacle in your head. Action shrinks fear, delay magnifies it. Those who move forward accept that confidence will be incomplete at first. They act with partial belief, partial clarity, partial courage. And that is enough. With each repetition, belief grows. Clarity sharpens. Courage expands. None of this happens without movement. Progress is not made by those who feel ready. It is made by those who are willing to start unready. They build confidence the only way it can be built, through consistent action. Not because they are special, but because they understand that waiting for confidence is waiting forever. Every time you choose comfort, you are making a trade, whether you realize it or not. Comfort feels harmless because it doesn't hurt, doesn't challenge, and doesn't demand change. It offers relief in the moment. But behind that relief is a quiet exchange taking place. You are giving up growth, strength, and possibility in return for temporary ease. The trade is subtle, which is why it happens so often. Comfort is attractive because it feels familiar. The brain is wired to prefer what it knows, even if what it knows is limiting. When you stay in comfortable patterns, you avoid uncertainty. You protect yourself from discomfort, criticism, and failure. But you also protect yourself from discovery. You never find out how capable you really are because you never push beyond what feels safe. Each choice of comfort reinforces the idea that avoiding discomfort is the priority. Over time, this reshapes your behavior. You start choosing what feels easy over what matters. Short-term relief becomes more important than long-term fulfillment. You might still dream, still plan, still talk about change, but your actions remain small and safe. Potential requires pressure to reveal itself, and comfort removes that pressure. The cost of comfort shows up gradually. At first, nothing seems wrong. Life feels manageable. You tell yourself you're being realistic. But slowly, dissatisfaction creeps in. You sense that you are capable of more, yet you remain where you are. That gap between who you are and who you could be creates internal tension. The more often you choose comfort, the wider that gap becomes. Comfort trains you to avoid challenge. When you repeatedly choose the easier path, difficulty starts to feel threatening. Tasks that require effort feel heavier. Risks feel scarier. You lose tolerance for discomfort, which makes growth feel increasingly unreachable. What once required courage now feels impossible, not because you became weaker, but because you stopped practicing resilience. Choosing comfort also affects how you see yourself. You begin to identify as someone who plays it safe. That identity influences future decisions. You hesitate more. You second-guess yourself. You lower your expectations. Not because you lack ambition, but because ambition demands discomfort. Over time, you stop asking for more from life because you stop demanding more from yourself. Potential doesn't disappear when ignored, it waits. But waiting has a cost. Unused potential turns into frustration, regret, and self-doubt. You wonder why you feel unfulfilled even when things seem fine. The answer is that comfort can meet your needs, but it cannot meet your purpose. Purpose requires challenge. It requires stretching beyond what feels natural. The most dangerous aspect of comfort is that it disguises itself as stability. You tell yourself you're being responsible, patient, or cautious. And sometimes those things are true. But when comfort becomes a habit rather than a choice, it quietly limits your future. Stability without growth eventually becomes stagnation. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you are shaping your future self. Small choices compound. One avoided challenge becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes a lifestyle, and that lifestyle slowly distances you from the person you could have been. Not through dramatic failure, but through consistent avoidance. Growth always demands discomfort. There is no path around it. The discomfort of effort, of learning, of risking failure, is temporary. The discomfort of unfulfilled potential lasts much longer. When you consistently choose comfort, you choose to delay your growth indefinitely. People who reach their potential are not more talented or fearless. They are more willing to be uncomfortable. They accept short-term pain for long-term gain. They understand that comfort is not the enemy, but living in it permanently is. Comfort is meant to be a place of rest, not a place of residence. The moment you choose discomfort with intention, something shifts. You reclaim control. You begin building strength instead of preserving ease. Each uncomfortable action expands your capacity. The fear doesn't vanish, but it loses authority. Potential starts to surface, not because conditions became perfect, but because you stopped choosing comfort as your default. Every comfortable choice is a decision. And every decision either moves you closer to your potential or farther from it. Comfort asks nothing from you today, but it takes something from you tomorrow. And over time, that cost becomes impossible to ignore. Not deciding is often mistaken for neutrality, as if doing nothing means staying in the same place without consequences. But in reality, not deciding is still a choice, and it almost always leads to the same outcome, staying exactly where you are. Life does not pause while you wait. It moves forward, and when you don't choose a direction, you are carried by default paths that rarely align with your deepest desires. Every moment you delay a decision, you are silently agreeing to your current situation. You may tell yourself that you haven't chosen yet, but your actions say otherwise. By continuing the same routines, tolerating the same frustrations, and accepting the same limits, you are actively choosing continuity. Comfortably or not, you are voting for the present to become the future. The danger of not deciding is that it removes urgency. When there is no clear choice made, there is no clear responsibility. You feel less pressure to act because nothing feels final. This creates a false sense of safety. You believe you are keeping your options open, when in truth you are allowing circumstances, habits, and other people's decisions to shape your life for you. Es que chambian. El miedo no es tu enemigo. El miedo aparece cuando algo importa. Lo peligroso no es sentir miedo, lo peligroso es quedarte paralizado por él. Decidir incomoda. Te obliga a salir de lo conocido, a dejar excusas y asumir consecuencias. Por eso muchos prefieren esperar. Esperar a sentirse listos, esperar a tener más tiempo, esperar que alguien los empuje. Pero mientras esperas, la vida no se detiene. El tiempo se cobrando factura. Cada día sin decisión es un día no vivo. No decidir per seguro, pero es una trampa. Te mantiene en el mismo lugar, con los mismos problemas, con las mismas quejas. Hoy un día despiertas y te das cuenta de que no fue la mala suerte. Not deciding slowly weakens your sense of agency. Agency comes from realizing that your choices matter. When you avoid decisions, you stop experiencing the cause and effect relationship between your actions and your outcomes. Life begins to feel like something that happens to you rather than something you participate in. This mindset reinforces passivity and makes change feel distant and unrealistic. Indecision also creates emotional stagnation. You live in a constant state of almost ready, almost prepared, almost confident. This state is exhausting because it offers no resolution. You carry the weight of possibility without the relief of progress. Over time, this drains motivation and replaces it with resignation. When you don't decide, fear grows unchecked. Fear thrives in ambiguity. Without action, your mind fills the gaps with imagined worst-case scenarios. Each day of hesitation gives fear more evidence that it should be listened to. Eventually, the fear of deciding becomes larger than the fear of staying the same, even when staying the same is painful. Not deciding also shapes your identity in powerful ways. You begin to see yourself as someone who hesitates, who avoids commitment, who waits for certainty. That self-image becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Future decisions feel heavier because they challenge not just a situation, but the way you see yourself. The longer you delay, the harder it becomes to act. Life rewards direction, not perfection. Clear decisions create momentum, even when they are imperfect. When you decide, you activate learning. You gather feedback. You adapt. Without a decision, nothing moves. There is no feedback, no growth, no correction. Just repetition. Staying the same might feel safe, but safety without movement becomes confinement. The routines that once felt familiar begin to feel restrictive. The goals you once had feel distant. You wonder how time passed so quickly without much changing. This realization often comes later, when the cost of indecision is impossible to ignore. Not deciding doesn't protect you from making mistake. It guarantees a different kind of mistake, the mistake of never trying. Years later, you don't regret the risks you took as much as the chances you never gave yourself. The weight of that realization is heavy because it cannot be corrected. Choosing to stay the same is still a decision, even if it's made unconsciously. And unconscious decisions shape lives just as powerfully as intentional ones. The difference is that intentional decisions give you ownership. Unconscious ones leave you feeling stuck and powerless. The moment you recognize that not deciding is a decision, something shifts. You regain clarity. You see that staying where you are is not an accident, but a choice you have been making repeatedly. That awareness is uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Because if staying the same is a choice, so is changing. Life doesn't require certainty to move forward. It requires commitment. When you commit, even without full confidence, you break the cycle of default living. You stop letting time decide for you. You stop drifting. You choose a direction, and that choice alone separates stagnation from progress.